feel like I'm kind of like looking, whatever. When we are looking at parenting, when it comes to astrology, the house that we're going to want to focus on is the 5th house. Now, the way that I practice astrology, I would actually focus on the ruler of the 5th house first. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't look at planets within the 5th house and aspects made to those planets, but in this video, I'm going to be going only over the ruler of the 5th house and where the ruler is within the chart, and not necessarily the sign or aspects. However, if you let me know in the comments, I can do a further video about what sign the ruler is in and also any aspects made to that ruler, because that is very important to know, because we want to know if the ruler is in detriment, is in fall. There's a lot of variables when it comes to that, but in this video it's just about the ruler. If you are new here, my name is Ileana Reyes and welcome to Matriarch Astrology. So when it comes to parenting, we are going to look at the ruler of the 5th house. Now, I'm first going to provide you here with the planets and the rulership of the planets so that you can see what planet is ruling your 5th house, and you can also see in which house that planet is in. So let's say you have the ruler of the 5th house in the 1st house. So people with this placement can describe themselves as creative, a fun, and playful type of parent. They may also want to urge them kids to be just as creative and just as playful. Now, when I talk about this placement, this can be your parenting approach or also how your child perceives you. So take it either way. There may be a sense of deep attachment with this placement because this is the house of self. So they may see their child as an extension of themselves. We do want to be careful though with that type of energy because it could easily sway into the parent putting on too much expectation upon the child. Of course, aspects and the sign placement is going to be very important here, so just take everything very general. This is a very beginner type of video, so it teaches you the very basics. So a good thing you're going to want to keep in mind here is that you want to keep a good balance between fostering their own individuality and maintaining healthy boundaries between a parent and child. With this placement, we could also see maybe a parent that may want to replicate their childhood or relive their childhood in a sense through their own children. Maybe they might see this as an opportunity to do things that they couldn't do as a child, or maybe just having fun in general, reliving it and having those fun experiences. Just make sure with this placement that it's something that your child wants to do as well. It could be that maybe a parent had done swimming when they were younger and they really want their child to pursue that same career, that same type of hobby or sport, and the child may not like that, and the child may want to do soccer or may want to do the arts or music. So that's just something that we always want to keep in mind there and keep it in the back of your head so that you are aware of it. So always important with this placement is to honor the child's own uniqueness and their independence, of course, within healthy limits and boundaries. Next up, we have the ruler of the 5th house in the 2nd house. So as we know, the 5th house represents creativity and fun and playful energy, and the 2nd house represents material possessions, values, and self-worth. Here we could see a focus on supporting a child's creativity with material resources. And age here depends because it can look very different for a toddler than it looks for a 10-year-old. So with a toddler, it could just be their teddy bears, and with a 10-year-old, it could be with their PlayStation or something that they really like that they own, or paint supplies. Again, the sign that it's in can also really waver this back and forth, so it can be very expansive. So just remember, this is very general. It could also be that a parent's values and their belief system may impact their child's creativity. With parents here, that we may see an even stronger emphasis on pushing their children to become artists or just work in a really creative field or pursue those type of hobbies. It doesn't have to be that they work in it, but a hobby. Overall, creativity is highly valued here because remember, the 5th house is creativity, the 2nd house is value. So a parent might put a lot of value in a child's creativity and their hobbies or things that they like to do that is creative, like art or theater, ballet, any of those type of things. Or it could be as simple as that a parent feels really proud of their child's artistic abilities or their creative endeavors. And we can see a strong emphasis here on putting in the money that it requires to pursue those things. So for example, if a child wants to do clay or some type of art and they want to take a class, a parent will provide those resources if it's within the home or if they have to pay for classes. For them, they value that and they will pay for it. And that doesn't have to just be art. I just gave that example, but this could be music, This could be theater, anything like that, even buying music supplies like a guitar or a piano, anything like that in the creative field. Oh, also paying for music lessons, that's another big one. On the other hand, if we see harder aspects here, and also depending on the sign, we could see the opposite, where we could see a preference for material items over creativity. So this could be like a parent that wants their child to pursue something that's more practical, that's going to bring in the long run, of course, bring in something that they're going to be able to work with and benefit from in a more serious financial matter. Next up, we have the ruler of the 5th house in the 3rd house. Now, the 3rd house represents communication, it represents writing, as well as siblings, short distance travel, and even neighbors. So when we look, let's say like at the 9th house, that is higher learning, university, and the opposite of the 9th is the 3rd. So that is your elementary school, middle school, high school, those type of learning. So here we can see a parent that's very involved in the child's education. And this could be that they're extra involved. So kind of like maybe signing up for a lot of the PTA meetings, or doing a lot of the traveling back and forth for, like, let's say soccer games, the soccer mom who's constantly going back and forth and going to games that are to another city. Also, there could be that parent is putting a lot of emphasis on the sibling relationship. That doesn't mean that there's going to be any tension. Again, it depends on the sign and the aspects of that ruler. But let's say if it's that you have a harsher sign placement or a harsh aspects, then you might see there that the parent puts a lot of emphasis on the sibling relationship if there is any type of tension or clashing verbal arguments, or just simply that the child may argue a lot with their sibling, or they get along well with their sibling and do everything with their sibling. Now here we can see an interest, again, like I had mentioned, in education, even to the point of homeschooling. This could be that the parent takes on a role of a teacher at home and decides to just do it on her own. That's something that makes her feel fulfilled and happy, especially if it's in a good sign. Let's say if Jupiter was the ruler and it's in the 3rd and it's in, let's say, Cancer or Sagittarius or something like that, I would say that it's more likely to want to take education and learning into their own hands and prefer to do it at home with their children. Next up, we have the ruler of the 5th house in the 4th house. Now, the 4th house represents home, family, ancestral roots, and also childhood in general. So with the ruler of the 5th in the 4th, parenting is going to take top priority here with a parent. And that's not to say that anybody else who doesn't have this placement doesn't make it a top priority. It's just really strong here, especially depending on the sign placement and aspect. For example, if you have strong positive aspects, this could be a very loving and protective home. And if you have more harder aspects, it may be that it's overprotecting or overbearing, and the child may feel like it's a bit too much. So make sure that you're always striking a balance there. So again, we're bringing in that creativity of the 5th house, but we're bringing it into the 4th. So it is about doing creative things at home. So it could be that a parent that likes to do, let's say, a creative outlet could be baking. It could be cooking with their child. It could also be doing arts and crafts at home with their children, or that the child does music lessons within the home, something that they like to do. Whatever hobby the child is interested in can be brought into the home, and it's something that the parent and child can enjoy doing together. This could also simply imply a person who is creative and likes to entertain at home and likes to express themselves within the home through art or other creative outlets. Again, this is only for parenting because there's a lot of different things that could come with this placement, not just parenting. But in this video, we are focusing only on parenting, so that's what I'm going to keep it focused on. We could also see with this placement a person who really wants children and really enjoys parenting. This can also make a fun and energetic type of parent because we're bringing that 5th house energy into the 4th, so it's very energetic, lively, and could be fun, and they may enjoy taking risks, again, depending on the sign. One thing we do want to keep in mind, especially if you're looking at harder aspects or if the ruler is in a hard sign, you could see a tendency here of a parent possibly competing in a way with a child. And I've seen this before where maybe a dad subconsciously is trying to compete with his son in like basketball or something like that. Not to say that it becomes aggressive or anything abusive. It's just that there can be that tendency to almost see the child as some type of competition. Again, I would take that with a grain of salt because you would really have to look at the aspects and the sign placement and a lot more to determine things like that. But I thought I would mention it. So just if that is the case, I wouldn't really recommend that happen or be going on. So just keep it in mind if you are a competitive person, or even that your partner is a competitive person, because again, remember, this is also how the child could perceive either or parents. because the 4th house is home and family. And again, this is parenting. So this is mom and dad. If that is the case, we have mom and dad or mom and mom. I don't want to go too deep in like all the different possibilities of like parents, caregivers, things like that. All right, next up we have the ruler of the 5th house in the 6th house. So the 6th house is ruled by Virgo. It represents hobbies, pets, daily routines, and health. Here we could see a parent who prioritizes routine and discipline by setting clear boundaries and clear rules. Now, whether those are very extremely strict or a little bit more lighthearted, again, is going to depend on what sign the ruler is in and aspects being made or to that ruler. But overall, we see the value in structure and routine here. Here we can see a parent that really monitors a child's schoolwork. They're setting up like a little agenda. Let's say if the child's in middle school or high school, helping them set up an agenda and prioritize their classes, make sure all their schoolwork is done, check marking when the homework is done. Or like in elementary school, making them their little folders and little notebooks and making sure everything has its name on it. They're the ones who attend the parent-teacher meetings every single time without being late. Again, it depends on sign. But overall, they are on top of the child's academic and monitoring their grades and monitoring their schoolwork and overall just their academic development. Also, they're going to put a lot of emphasis on health, making sure that we're doing those doctor checkups to check on the health, as well as putting an importance on eating healthy, exercising, and just making sure that they're making good lifestyle choices and that they are providing that in their home for their children. However, with the emphasis being so strong here, we do want to make sure that we're making time for ourselves and we're not overextending. We want to make sure that we have a good balance between parenting and our parenting role, our work, and also our just personal self-care. It could become that it's too much where you're overworking yourself and then you become depleted. You could be doing one more than the other. So make sure that you are maintaining a healthy work-life balance, with parenting there in the middle, I guess, with 3. With this placement, you can also see parenting as a type of work. Also, make sure you're not putting an overemphasis on your child's achievements and their academic work, because we don't want to put too much pressure on them that's unnecessary. Because, of course, with every placement, we want our children to succeed, but we don't want it to be at a point that we are overdoing it or overexerting that. Next up, we have the ruler of the 5th house in the 7th house. Now, the 7th house represents partnerships. It's also about marriage and contracts with other people, legal battles. So here we could see a parent who desires a partner that has the same parenting values as them. And they're going to put a lot of emphasis on that. It's very important to have a partner that values your way of seeing children and your way of parenting. Whether that is something that's going to be positive or a bit of a strain, again, is going to depend on the sign that the ruler is in as well as the aspects. So it could be that you want a partner that emphasizes creativity and puts a lot of energy and a lot of importance on creative pursuits when it comes to their children and making sure that they can express themselves and that their child are able to express themselves creatively. Or it could be as simple as just wanting their partner to support their child's work. This could be in their schoolwork or their creative work, just that partner also has the same commitment that the person does, because it's very important for them. Also, we can see a parent that wants to teach their children about relationships, and I don't mean just in a romantic way. It could also be relationships with friends and teaching their children how to balance and compromise, how to deal with confrontations, maybe that the child is maybe having struggles with friends, and teaching them in a way how to resolve issues with other children, either at school or in the neighborhood. Another thing we want to be careful with here is making sure you have a balance between the time spent with your partner and the time spent with your children, because there could be an imbalance there. Especially you want to look at the aspects and sign placement to see about that, but there could be an imbalance there. It may be that the person feels like they don't have time for partnerships and it's all about their children, or vice versa. Next up, we have the ruler of the 5th house in the 8th house. Now, the 8th house represents shared resources, the occult, paranormal activity, closeness, and transformation. Here we can see a strong connection to your children and also those shared resources or creativity and transformation in a way. They may also attach deeply to their children, and that may make them undergo a strong transformative relationship. And what I mean by that is that having children can be very transformative for you, whether that's good or bad or positive. However that manifests is going to depend a lot on the aspects and also sign placement, but either way, we're going to see transformation here when it comes to having children. We could also see here a strong desire to have a legacy through children or through their creative undertakings, something to leave their children behind, because this is the house of resources and inheritance. So maybe you want to make sure that you are leaving enough money for your children to inherit whenever you do transform into the spirit realm. And it doesn't have to be just money. It could just be leaving a legacy behind, or leaving a company behind, or a practice behind. Oh, I do have to mention that this house can also represent power and control issues, or any type of manipulation or obsession. So depending on aspects and sign placement and much more, you could see here maybe some confrontation here with children that may involve power or control. One of the things I've seen is that there's like a divorce, and unfortunately we see that the other parent wants to have the children and uses them almost as a form of control by taking the children, and just like a battle back and forth between two separated parents, something like that. Now that doesn't mean that that is every single case, because we have to look at all the possibilities here, aspects and stuff like that. So that doesn't mean that this is what's going to happen. That's just one indication that I've seen, and they did have a lot stronger, harsher aspects and other things that indicated that as well, not just this placement. Also, we can see here an interest in psychotherapy, some form of counseling or healing. This could bring a lot of healing. Having children can bring healing into your life, and this could be consciously or unconsciously. It could spark up an interest in taboo subjects or spirituality. And one form of psychotherapy that I am aware of is called play therapy, which is something very beneficial for children, especially if they're needing some assistance with school and their interactions with other children. I think play therapy is a great psychotherapy that is available to children. Next up, we have the ruler of the 5th house in the 9th house. So the 9th house represents foreign travel, higher learning, philosophical ideas, or religious practices, as well as spirituality. So we may see parents here who urge their children to travel and want them to pursue higher educations, like going to college and getting a master's degree, or just simply want them to travel abroad, or even become a foreign exchange student so that they can get a broader perspective of the world. We're going to see a big emphasis here on a parent putting social equality with their children and teaching them right from wrong. And again, that doesn't mean that other parents aren't doing that. It's just a lot of emphasis here because this is the 9th house ruled by Sagittarius, which also represents law. You could just see a parent that wants their child to study religion. In one case, that they want their child to become a priest, or the other one may want their child to pursue spirituality. Here we may see a strong parent-child attachment, with the parent taking on a mentoring-like role or a teacher-like role. Now, as I mentioned, with the 3rd house, we see a stronger emphasis on the possibility of homeschooling. So since this is a child's chart, even a teenager's chart, we can still see that homeschooling here in the 9th house, because those two houses are opposing. 3rd house is early learning and the 9th house is higher learning. So either way, we could see that the person wants to homeschool just as much as they did in the 3rd house placement. We can also see that with the 9th house placement of the parent taking on the role of the teacher, and they rather just teach their child themselves. Or it could be as simply as, let's say, one of the parents wants to take on a mentor role and help be one of the coaches for their child's basketball, because remember, we're looking still at the 5th house, the ruler of the 5th house, which is still creativity, hobbies. So that could be that the parent wants to mentor them in that way. Also, we can see a parent who provides a study place for their child. If they don't do the whole homeschooling thing, they can just provide a really nice study area for their child to have, like a desk, computer, all the materials they need for school to study after school or do their homework. They could put a lot of emphasis on providing those educational materials. So this could be that they go out of their way to buy educational type books, even books about foreign countries if traveling isn't something that is available, because not everybody's able to travel abroad. But if that is a possibility, mobility, I see that as highly likely here that a parent will take their children overseas just so that they can experience, because that's very important with this placement. So could be that importance on planning family trips abroad, just so that they can see those new cultures, new foods, new ways of living, different ways of living, I mean. As I mentioned earlier, this could also be that they just want their child to study abroad, and they may encourage that when they're older, let's say in their older teens. One thing we do want to be careful here is that this overcommitment and this strong child and parent attachment can make it hard to set boundaries and help foster independence for that child. It could be that the parent feels like they have to do everything, or maybe unknowingly does too much and is not allowing the child to learn on their own. Again, this really depends with age, so just go by age here, age appropriate. So for example, it could be when a child is really, really small, the parent is making sure that she's providing everything and putting all the homework on the table for the child, reminding the child, bringing the child in, so much to a point where she's not allowing the child to just maybe set a time for himself where he can come, or allow time for him to see if he does it on his own. We just want to make sure that we're fostering independence as well, and that we're not hindering them in that aspect. So make sure you're allowing your children to explore their interests and make their own decisions while offering direction or support. When it's too strong of a link, it can make it hard for them to transition to maturity and build healthy relationships. As I told, all the other house placements aspects is very important to look at, as well as the sign that the ruler is placed in. Okay, next up we have a ruler of the 5th house in the 10th house. Now the 10th house rules the career and your public image. So we could see here a parent who wants to express themselves creatively or involve their children in their work and the work that they do. Or children in general. It doesn't have to be their children, but children in general. So perfect example here is me. I have the ruler of my 5th in my 10th house. And I'm here doing a video about parenting and children in my career, which is an astrologer. So I'm bringing that 5th house energy of children, doing it in a creative way, astrological way, and helping other parents with their parenting by bringing in some insight. Another indication, which I don't know about this yet because my children are still small, could be that you are known for something that your children do when they're older. We could also see here a parent who puts in a lot of emphasis on their child's success. So by that I mean a parent who just encourages their child from really young to follow a career path, even if it changes, because of course when a child is so small it's going to change, but it's very supportive of whatever it is they choose to do in their career. And we're still talking about creativity here, the 5th house. So let's say their child wants to be an artist, then with this placement the parent's going to want to see how we can make this into a lucrative type of career, making sure we go to college and learning about art, things like that. So since we have the 5th house mixed with authority figures and bosses, and then we have 5th house of children, with these two mingling, it could be that you see those power struggles being mirrored back to you in some type of way when it comes to interacting with your children. So your children may reflect back to you something that you may struggle with at work, or a power struggle that you have with someone at work that is, let's say, your boss or manager, someone that's above you. Your child may trigger you in some way, depending again on aspects and sign placement. This is not always the indication. This is just one possible one that I have seen with another client. Similar to the 8th house, we could see also a desire to leave a legacy behind for your children. That could just be leaving them a company, or starting your own dentistry and leaving that behind for your children, or a psychology practice and wanting to leave that behind for your children. Now, I don't say that I have to have one of my children become an astrologer as me. I'm just starting now on YouTube, but I don't know. Who knows how big this could get. I'm really excited for it. I love astrology and I love providing these type of videos, and I would like if one of my children decide to pursue astrology when they become adults. And it would be nice, I'm not gonna lie, to leave them something, some type of legacy that I have created, and have them follow behind me in my footsteps. So I do agree with that. And again, this is about positively impacting as well other future generations through one's work and career. Now, one thing I do want to emphasize here is the importance of work-life balance, because the 10th house naturally opposes the 4th house of home. Now, I know this very well. is making it very important to find time for work and make sure that you also find time for family. And that's something that I had to figure out and find a good balance and equilibrium myself, because I do tend to put a lot of emphasis on work, and that's for other reasons. I have a stellium, there's a lot of other things, so that may not be the case with you, but just making sure that you are finding a work-life balance and that you're not overcompensating one over the other, because it could be that you're just prioritizing family time and not enough work, or vice versa. So a good equilibrium is always important. And finally, you could involve your children in your occupation or your work, whatever way that may be. Okay, next up we have the ruler of the 5th house in the 11th house. Now the 11th house represents friends, social communities, social networking online or in person. So here we could see a child who's really popular, that your child has a lot of friends over at your house, that you're ending up having to host a lot of sleepovers, birthday parties. Whether that's enjoyable or not, again, is going to depend on the sign placement and aspects. We can see a parent who wants to emphasize on a lot of the child's creativities and passions, especially when it comes to their friends and doing things with their friends that is creative. We could see a parent here who puts a lot of emphasis on socializing their child, so taking their child out a lot to socialize with other children, wanting them to interact with other children, supporting that sense of community. So we do want to make sure that we're balancing relationships with letting them be themselves, because if we're looking at, let's say, harder aspects, maybe the child doesn't want to engage so much in all the socialization and the parent may want them to, or vice versa. So we want to be sure here that you're knowing what your child wants. It's also important to balance your own social life and your own needs, because one of the possibilities here we could see is that maybe there's so much emphasis on your child's socialization and, let's say, soccer practices and birthday parties and get-togethers, that you're not putting yourself as a priority as well, and you're not taking time for yourself or giving yourself time to rest, doing like a spa day, and you can become easily depleted that way. Also, another possibility here is that your own desires or hobbies, because remember that's a 5th house, could be at odds with your child's social obligations, which then causes stress and challenges. So find a good balance. And last, we have the ruler of the 5th house in the 12th house. So the 12th house is about the hidden, the unseen, the mystical, and the arts. So the arts is also seen in the 5th as well as the 12th. We see a good blend there, depending on sign and aspects. This may cause one to hide their creative talents or their way of expressing themselves, or may even feel afraid of them in some type of way. Another possibility with this placement could be that your children bring about a type of spiritual awakening within you, or a sense of growth, because it's similar to the 8th house of transformation. Another possible manifestation is that you could feel like parenting is something that feels like a sacrifice, or that you're giving up something to become a parent. So one example is somebody who may like to spend a lot of time creating art, and when they have children, they're going to have to really naturally take a step back and not being able to dedicate hours and hours to a painting masterpiece as they would have enjoyed or had been able to do before. The sacrifice doesn't have to be that it's something extreme or it's something awful. It's just you're giving up something for your children. It could also be that a parent takes a more spiritual or mystical approach to parenting. I don't have this placement, but I do have other aspects that's slightly similar. So I do also take a more spiritual, mystical approach to my parenting while keeping order and structure, but also include in spirituality. So for example, like my children have small children oracle cards that we kind of pull for fun to see about their day, or any messages from the spirit realm, or messages from guides. I have crystals all throughout my house. My children see them. They know them. My child sleeps with a black obsidian. He requests a black obsidian, especially if he has a bad dream. He always comes to me and is like, I had a bad dream. Can I have a black obsidian, or can I have, like, he knows the names. Can I have obsidian? Can I have tourmaline? Things like that. It also may be beneficial to take a more spiritual and creative mystical approach if there is any struggle here with tapping into creativity or some form of self-expression, either with you or your children. So if that's something they're experiencing, I would encourage creativity and supply them with whatever it is that they enjoy, whether it's clay or art materials, anything like that. So engaging in childlike activities with your own children may help you connect with your own inner child. And this can be a very healing thing to do because you're tapping into that forgotten child and you're being able to explore that again. And that really helps with the bonding as well. As always, make sure that you are balancing independence and freedom for your child and allowing them an appropriate amount of freedom depending on their age with responsibilities. And the last tip I'd like to give for parents with this placement is to explore meditation or spirituality in general, which I think that if you're watching this video, that's something that I wouldn't have to say, but it depends. It could just be that you're curious about astrology, but any other forms of spirituality can really help you connect with your own inner wisdom and guidance so that you don't feel any type of fear in parenting children or fear of something happening to your children or anything like that. You're really able to balance out your own emotions and balance yourself out. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I have so much more coming up for you guys. I am going to be doing the child rising signs next. And if you are interested in knowing how to nurture and support your child's emotional needs, I do have a Moon Through the Signs child series that will come up here next. And until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.